The Volvo V90 Cross Country is a familiar formula with a different name. The XC70 that was out just a few years ago was an incredibly successful vehicle for Volvo. It's followed the same idea. It was a full-size estate with a little more ground clearance and some body cladding. The name XC70 doesn't really line up with Volvo's name and numbering strategy anymore, so that's why the V90 Cross Country takes its place with an additional 2.3 inches of ground clearance over the standard V90 wagon. This is the pinnacle of Volvo's wagon expressions. And for those of you that have already clicked on this video, you're probably keen on the concept of a wagon. You get it, you understand why it is an attractive combination. And I've been living with this V90 for the past few days, and it's time to break down everything that I've learned about this car. And then at the end of the video, I'll put it in my ranking system to determine where it lives amongst its competitors. So without further ado, let's go for a drive. For the V90 Cross Country, there is exactly one powertrain configuration here in Canada, and that features the T6 engine with all-wheel drive. Now, the T6 engine is something that you're going to find in quite a few other Volvo products, and that is their four-cylinder engine that has a turbocharger and a supercharger that produces 316 horsepower and 295 pound-feet of torque. The engine is an interesting one because you often get a complex mix of different noises. Initially, you get a little bit of whine from the supercharger. You'll have this bass thrum of the engine, and then later on in the range, the turbocharger comes along to help out too. As the supercharger comes on immediately, that helps lead into the turbocharger's boost. I would actually say that the power is really consistent. It just builds and it builds. It doesn't feel like you're stepping up as you do in so many other turbocharged units. It's paired up to an 8-speed automatic transmission, and you can change the gears manually with the shifter that you have down here. It responds fairly well in regular use. If you ever go into dynamic mode, which you'll do by changing around the drive modes with this roller switch down here. With that extra ground clearance and ride height, I don't really feel like I'm much taller above the road. I just got out of the V60, which of course is a smaller estate from Volvo. It's a completely different class of car, but for that cross-country edition, it also gains another 3 inches of ground clearance. So we're comparing very like vehicles. It doesn't feel like I'm too high above the ground, but of course in all of the situations where I've come across some deeper snow and the conditions that I'm facing today, it's hardly been a worry. And this V90 I'm in is the Momentum. So with the Cross Country, you either have the Momentum or the Inscription, and for the regular V90, that's only available as an R design. For the people that really do want to get themselves into the lower V90, the more athletic looking vehicle, the R design helps spruce up some of that exterior flair with a few minor touches. So even in the most basic configuration of this V90 Cross Country, you're getting a lot of very desirable things. So you get the 9-inch touchscreen that is on every other Volvo vehicle. I love it. It comes with Apple CarPlay and Android Auto, and it's very easy to learn. The 12.3-inch driver's information display as your digital instrument cluster, you can customize it a bit, but it's not as sharp or crisp or as customizable as a lot of its competition. You'll have the parking sensors, the glass panoramic roof, a power tailgate, pilot assist, and heated front seats. Pilot Assist is Volvo's semi-autonomous driving system, and I've tested it out here and the XC40, and it's a really good semi-autonomous system. You've got to think of it as an extra helping hand if you were going down a highway. That's where it's at its best. Quite frankly, you could take your hands off the wheel for a second and it would take care of you, but of course Volvo really wouldn't like you to do that at all in their vehicle in case you do find yourself in a bit of an accident. And then of course the standard suite of Volvo's active safety systems. The car I'm in also has the premium package, so that adds the 360-degree camera, a heated wheel and heated rear seats, and those rear seats have the ability to be folded with a touch of a button. Stepping into the Cross Country, I was kind of expecting it to be a softly sprung vehicle because of all of the additional ride height and the amount of travel that the suspension would have to cope with, but it's actually really well sorted. It's not firm, but you can feel the bumps, and it's not soft in the way that it floats down the road. You do feel like you have a connection to the asphalt. In the normal mode, steering is noticeably heavier than what it was in the V60, and I really quite like the heft of this. There's not much feel coming out of it, but it's accurate and it's direct. And driving down the highway, this thing is very, very quiet. I think the wing mirrors are slightly larger than what they are on the V60, but that's not causing any dramas whatsoever. But one thing that I didn't mention about the optional equipment is this separate sound system that you can buy. It's a $3,700 option. It's the Bowers & Wilkins 18-speaker sound system, and it has very quickly become potentially the best sound system I've ever experienced in a car. You can change around the different sound settings in here with trying to focus it maybe for a single passenger or the driver. You have different sound modes, including a Gothenburg concert hall mode. If you had any issues of external noises like road or wind noise, not that this vehicle really has them, you put on some music and you blast it on this Bowers & Wilkins system, all of that minimal noise, vibration and harshness is gone, and you're left with what I think is a glorious system. Other things to discuss with the interior: it is largely black with some touches of silver and grey for the trim, but I'd say it's actually quite airy. The glass roof contributes to it, and it has a decent sized greenhouse, but I think it's actually a little bit smaller than the V60. If you put a comparison, a side-by-side shot of this V90 versus that V60, it looks like this has substantially less glass. The leather seats are great. I have a little bit of thigh extension. For a tall guy like me, I'm 6'4", and that is invaluable. There's a soft touch material all the way to the very base of the door cards, and there's space for 3 cup holders right along here. Some of the common themes I've experienced with these Volvo models is that I don't agree with having gloss black buttons here on the steering wheel. Those get grubby really quickly. The volume knob doesn't feel as hefty and as purposeful as all of the other buttons that surround it and on the steering wheel. This wasn't really a complaint, but when I was in the V60, I said it was hard to get used to a knob as your engine starts stop. I'm so used to all of buttons behind or on the steering wheel. But since I was in that model, I went directly into this one, and now it's exactly the same. A bit of a learning curve if you're a new owner, but honestly, it'll take you 3-4 days tops. When it comes to rear seat comfort, I'm very comfortable sitting behind myself with a little bit of knee room to spare, a good amount of headroom, and because the seats are mounted a bit higher, you actually have a good amount of foot space too. Like the V60, you also have a ski pass-through in the center seat. The rear seats have their own climate adjustment settings with this touch capacitive section right above the air vents. There's a 3-pin household power socket, and of course, if you want to add a little bit of rear visibility, you can lower those headrests with a touch of a button here in the touchscreen. Not that I think you really need it. I actually think this rear visibility is quite good. The only gripe I have with the rear is that you can't put the windows all the way down. There's still a few inches of glass remaining, so if you ever wanted to hang your arm out the window, that's going to be a bit uncomfortable for you. One thing I'm surprised to say is just how high that tailgate rises. As a tall guy, I'm often coming close to bumping my head on them when I'm reviewing minivans or high-riding SUVs, and this, don't really need to duck my head. I'm very impressed by that. The buttons for folding down the rear seats are on the right. You have a few straps to hold things up, and then you can fold up a portion of the floor to help divide things, and it's very rigid. It will stay in place. There's a bit of netting that you can use to separate the boot space from the rear seats. Let's say you have a bit of a slobbering dog and you don't want to get its saliva all the way down your seats. That is the device for you. And the floor is actually on gas struts. Now that makes it very easy to reach for the spare wheel and take it out if you're ever in need of doing so. But the problem is with that spare wheel is that there's no space below to hide away your security cover. The Volvo V90 Cross Country has a lot of features and characteristics that are certainly apparent in equivalently priced and sized SUVs. The Cross Country, though, has something else in mind. It wants to be different, it wants to be unique, and for the individuals that are looking for car-like handling, perhaps the packaging is what's attractive to you, or maybe you just simply want something that your neighbor doesn't, then the Cross Country is certainly the car for you. There are no major flaws I've found with this vehicle, just a couple of nitpicks here and there. So the 2019 Volvo V90 Cross Country is absolutely a vehicle that you should consider owning if you're looking for a full-size wagon in your driveway. So that's been everything from me. Thank you so much for taking the time to watching this video. Please like the video if you liked it, share it if you think other people will like it too, and if you want to hit that subscribe button just down below too, that does the world for me. Thank you so much for watching, and I hope to see you again.